will actually put on ground what I'm talking about and why I'm connecting it the way I'm connecting it. Maybe we go back about 30 years. I'm very safely taking 30 years because I think somewhere all of us would have seen that period. Unless somebody has not, I'm a little sorry, but 15 years Samit has taken back. I'm just jumping a little more, 30 years, because that's something which will suit what we are talking about, as well as will prove what, or will give you a very clear indication of what it is all about. What is the reason behind going back so much? Maybe we talk of professions which were very, very popular then. We'll talk about the medical profession. We can talk about engineering profession. We can talk about the chartered accountancy's profession. About 30 years back, I think these were some of the professions which anybody would actually by default hear it from his or her people or parents or wherever and whatever you were going to. But what did all these have in common? They all had one very, very important thing in common called education. And because of which they became indispensable, they were respectable, they had acceptability. I'm sure you'll be able to add many more such wonderful lines to those professions, why they were at that level and why they were accepted at that level. In the same period, we also had some other professions which were existing, but they were lesser known. What were these professions which were lesser known? Maybe a hotelier, maybe a choreographer, maybe an actor for that matter, or maybe even, sports for that matter. What did all these have in common? They all had these few points which were very much in common. They were not preferred. They had a taboo attached to it. They were not selectively acceptable. Acceptability was very low. Maybe we can add a few more of these negatives to these industries which existed 30 years ago. But are we talking about that the same thing? What we see about these today is very important. What we see about this is an equal platform and acceptability in the society. Now, why am I connecting education to society? I'm sure you understood by now. Because if we as wedding planners or as event managers need to progress, need our industries to grow, I think we need our societies to start accepting us. I think we need our societies to start accepting us at a very, very humble level. Unlike, obviously, our can't be summit guts. There have to be levels where people have to be accepted in various sectors, in various forums, which could be the traditional wedding, I would say, market is existing from hundreds of years to come. Here what we're doing is, we are actually putting the plan together and giving a better experience for the money they spend, for the delivery that we create. So when we are talking about an equal platform and acceptability of both, what is that we are talking about? Are we taking a small shortcut? No, I would beg to differ here because there are many reasons why this has happened. And the most important reason why this has happened is the growing confidence in the mind of society and acceptability. Now you can ask me, how does this happen, Sanjay? Is it something which you can prove? Yes, I can talk about it, and I'll give you a quick understanding about this. When 30 years back, when we talk about a doctor, I'm sure people of my age will remember, I'm 45 by the way, will remember that you would go to an MBBS doctor. You will go to a doctor who's qualified as an MBBS for anything that you would look at, for anything that you would actually experience or anything that you would want a solution for. But at the same time, that particular field, the MBBS field or the medical field, invested heavily into education, invested heavily into specialization, invested heavily into what today we call as an Apollo group or maybe a Max group or whatever other groups you're talking about. And what was the advantage of this entire story? The advantage was that the establishment of a medical fraternity in India is now at an unparalleled level. It's at a level where society accepts them at almost every nook and corner. Society reaches out to them at every nook and corner. You are a respectable and an accepted professional for whom a solution is there, for who has a solution in every home, in every office, in every location. Now, invariably, a wedding planner or an event manager needs to reach that level of a delivery, of that level of reach to be created for himself or herself. And that is very much possible if we have achieved the focus and the various verticals that these particular industries have achieved. Why are we talking about it? We are talking about a country, a population, which I'm sure a few continents may put together and look at us for, or a few countries will put together look at us for. So, a professional with the best education and the best knowledge is what is the way a wedding planner and event manager should be looked at. Should be the qualification is the most important thing. Now, what we are talking about qualification is that we need to have a catalyst to our entire process. And I would call that catalyst as education. If we are in a position to have something which talks about a proper education, a proper system that will actually recognize and put planners, whether event or wedding, on the map of India, saying that this is how the event planners are qualified, this is where they are qualified, and this is how they can be accepted as people who have the power to deliver what you dream, have the power to deliver what you imagine. And this exactly is what will be the strength of it. So, if it is for a wedding planner to be addressed as a professional, a foundation of education and knowledge is very, very important. Now, and the proof of this, as we've all seen from the various subjects which I have discussed, whether I'm talking in terms of a medical fraternity, I can talk in terms of an engineering facility, I can talk in terms of the way various other finance, management, and so many other areas have grown, the multiple professionals, the multiple people who have actually got into this, and today are having an equal opportunity everywhere. Now this opportunity, the kind of business we are talking about, is only possible in case we are talking about the knowledge that a professional and an education system will provide for a wedding planner or an event planner. Now, what is it that we are coming back to? Obviously, the question that I started with, it's about the importance of education and knowledge for a wedding professional. I'm sure that I have come very close to what you are talking, but I think what is more important is how important is what we are talking. The reason why I'm emphasizing on this fact about the professionalism and about the way it has to be looked at, I put some bullets here, which are very, very niche. It says, creates professionals with the right knowledge and the required bandwidth. Now, if a Samit Garg, or if my company, or if any of the people who are sitting here who have been here in the industry for 10, 15 years, were actually to contribute to this kind of a knowledge and would create a bank and would create a platform, I'm sure it will create professionals with the right knowledge and the required bandwidth. The entire process of business always grows with the fact that competition has to come in. And this is the competition which actually brings out the best in you, actually increases the platform for the kind of business that you do, and increases the kind of bandwidth that people look at. The more the professionals, the more the services will be required, which is a very, very big fact which you must have seen very close to our industry, which example I want to recite, and that is the hoteling industry. I think if I talk about 15, 20, 30 years back, Chennai, where I used to live, had about 2 hotels, which was, I think, Taj and Chola. Hyderabad had just one, Taj Banjara, for all I know. And maybe a little Bangalore I know, so maybe I know about the ITC or something that existed there. But today, Hyderabad boasts of almost about 40 5-star hotels. I haven't seen a huge growth of population, which is, Hyderabad is about 1 crore, putting our district together. But it has almost about 40 hotels, which today do almost equal amount of business. It has got the biggest of the convention centers, which does equally good amount of business, which maybe a Delhi or a Bombay does in terms of conventions. But do they have professionals in event management? No. They are all hoteliers who have actually built their entire empires by putting in the right education. 30 years back, I think I can hardly remember a hotel management academy or institute. 20 years back, I remember about IHM, which came up in Hyderabad in a big way. Today, Hyderabad boasts of almost about 20 such institutions which teach hotel management, which have people placed across the world, not India alone. So when we are talking about how education will help, it shows very clearly that the more the people accept your profession, the more the people are confident about your profession, the faster is your growth, the multiple areas is your growth. I would say that 20 years back, I would look at going back home for dinner, but today I have hundreds of options. I'm very sure that wherever I'm going, I will get the professional service, I will get a very, very good meal, I will get a guaranteed meal, I will get a very, very well laid out place which I go to. Now, these are points that make us think in the direction where our industry is. We are very close neighbors to a hotel industry. We're very, very strong in our format because we go into all these places. We handle a lot of work in these areas, and we are actually taking forward a lot of such detailing which is required, which a hotel may not do. But then why are we still talking about a place where our education is not done? And why are we thinking about it, that it is important or no? I would like to make that point very well, and I hope you all accept it, that yes, it is important that we have education and knowledge of wedding planning and event management. Yeah, we create professionals accepted by the society. We will also get endorsed because once a professional and the profession is educated, it gets endorsed by the society. It authenticates the service that we are talking about. It actually authenticates the process. The entire process is authenticated. It will also help us provide undisputable platforms as well as respectability. It will provide education to the society to look at us as professionals. It will help bridge the gap between the society as well as the professionals. There are the acceptable limits expected in a profession. Now, this is a very tricky statement because when you talk about setting acceptable limits for a profession or a professional, what do I mean by it? I'll give you a very simple example which you'll all accept. When we talk about a medical practitioner, we all look at him one step before God's temple or God's place. Why? We believe that he can save the people, he can save the patient for whatever reason. But he has a limitation. The patients do die. There are situations when we cannot save the patient. So this is exactly in every professional vertical that we talk about. There are limitations, and these limitations are acceptable if the society is aware about it. If not, when there is a failure in an event, there may be multiple reasons for it, but ultimately the professional, if he does not have an educated client or an educated society or an educated location, he is going to be the center of what we are all today blamed, which is a very, very common affair. So that's a very, very important point which education will help us with. It replaces suspicion with confidence in the society. It's a very common thing, like all of us face. Is this guy quoting us double? Is he going to actually have a cut with the other supplier we're working about? Or is he giving us genuine rates? This is a very common story that we all face about. But if there's an educated society, if there is a society which understands how we operate, and if I am operating with a team of 100 people, and if there is a guy who's operating a team of 10 people, the society understands that that infrastructure cost which I'm incurring is why I'm quoting more than someone else to make a delivery which is in perfect line with what you're looking for. These are very important points which I have put together. I'm sure that most of you will accept what I'm talking, and anyway we'll have an open house about it. Creates the roadmap for the future. Any industry which educates its professionals will actually have that advantage of getting multiple inputs from people, from professionals, from various aspirants who want to be event managers, and that will actually lay a beautiful roadmap to what we are all looking for. As our Prime Minister says, we are going to be one of the superpowers, and with the way we have most of our openings done with whatever systems we're talking about, I'm sure education will help us, because anybody who is from Europe or in America, or who's here from any of the advanced countries, looks at people who are professional, who are qualified, who actually understand what it means to handle an event and why to handle an event. Now that exactly is the roadmap that we all should be looking at, because we are not as, again I will put it as, right now I have an example of Summit because he was here on top, doing work across wherever he is going in the world. You must be encountering professionals who have a much better level of service than what we get over here from vendors, and so on and so forth. So what does it mean by creating a roadmap? It means it talks about the various levels of deliveries, the various levels of technologies, the various levels of understanding that we want to create. Now that is the roadmap we're talking about. Roots, the importance of specialization in industry. Yes, we are all aware of the various specializations which are world over and come to us, but it still has an advantage which we all look for. It identifies each specialization in the vertical. Now what does this mean? Our industry is full of the verticals. As I showed you in the initial thing, I played the film. Now what was it that that film had? It had everything from understanding how to create a venue layout, how to actually build a structure where I'm going to have 17,000 people sitting under it for 3 days. The total structural work which I did in that entire event was close to about 7.5 lakh square feet, which included exhibitions, which included entertainment zones, which included production zones, which included all, whatever you were seeing over there. We also executed planning and executed roads, approaches, the way the crowd would come in and go, because our turnaround time for the entire event in the morning was less than 30 minutes. We would have in 30 minutes all our vehicles coming in, delivering, dropping and moving out of the place. So the kind of work that we are talking about, the kind of scope which is available, these are one-odd events which happen now in India because we have not experienced this way of professionalism that has been there. Nor have I done it. I'm sure that in those 4 months which I worked over there, I learned parallelly as I was working. Because I did not have a teacher who would sit and tell me, this is how it has to be put together. This exactly is what, when I'm talking about identifying the specializations in each vertical. Now here, we have some companies which work with a lot of specialists, which have various kind of operational systems that are put into place, but these are not understood by all, this is not understood by the industry on a larger scale, if I'm looking at, which I've experienced, are not understood by clients on a larger scale because clients have not understood the way an event is. For example, I will give you a small note. Whenever we go to a client and we talk to a client about an event, we always tell the client that you're investing in the event. We never tell you're spending in the event. Because whatever the client does, whether it's a wedding, whether it is going to be a corporate event, whether it is going to be another retail activity, the client is actually investing in his own event, in his own product, to be able to get what he wants, which he cannot do himself from you. These are the important aspects which education will bring to the fore. And this exactly is what, these exactly are the points when I talked about the importance of education and knowledge for wedding planners. Why are we talking about it? Okay, there is one, I'm sorry. Encourages most acceptance and thus leading to more growth. Yeah. Okay. No, that's quite self-explanatory. But most, above all, what it does is creates a huge amount of confidence, whether it is in India, whether it is for your partners across the globe, wherever we are talking about. The major reason for having education in event management and wedding planning is because we are actually at the threshold of a huge industry which is poised to grow. From here, I'm sure if you actually have numbers about the number of weddings which happen in India, which are not accounted for, will any day bypass an IT industry or a steel industry which India looks at. This is the kind of threshold we are at. And what is the reason for expecting this threshold to become more official is because most of the families or most of the people who are becoming now, surplus with money and who are becoming more and more outgoing to holidays, outgoing to spending on themselves are the middle income group, which is growing at the fastest level. And this comprises of the biggest amount of market we're talking about. So in that format, when you look at an industry, we look at our entire system that is in place, education and the knowledge about this event industry and about getting professionals into it will make a huge impact and a huge difference on the entire process. Yeah. I have a small, since this is a wedding planning forum, I have a small wedding which I have done. I'm not comparing it or I can't compare it to anything, but it's a small act which we put together, and I would like you to just go see this.